Live. Ha 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 ha. See how
Fine.
that works. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Hoff Time Report. And we're coming to you from the studio again with State Representative Ben Adams. Well, hello.
Hello. I'm gonna take this off.
The burning question there. Yeah, because this is informal.
Well,
That's
everyone
why
knows who I am now. You
I
just
don't
told
get. Yeah,
everybody.
I know it's too late. You can't leave. I just dressed down because I figured I'm not going to wear a suit every night to go do this. You can come from wherever you're coming from and have to wear the suit. But if you get uncomfortable, you can always take the coat off or whatever, or the tie off. Just keep it decent. It's a family show.
You're good.
Well, welcome. Just kind of kick things off a little bit. The burning question is: are you related to John Adams?
Depends on who you ask.
Are you? Do you have a relation?
It depends on who you ask.
Oh, is it one of those?
So my aunt swears up and down that she has handwritten letters that trace us all back. But it's the one portion of our family tree that there is clearly something missing there, and she swears that she's got it. But I'd rather wait and just assume that I'm just Ben Adams.
Just
Yeah, no pressure.
You
at
might
this
just be
point.
related to John Adams, the Cassia County Commissioner from the late '90s.
Yeah, who knows?
Different strain of the family, though, I think. Anyway, really appreciate you coming. Let's get right down to business. The the legislature, I always like to say to people that every legislative session is like a snowflake. They're all very different. And you, of course, this is only your second legislative session, so you don't have a lot of comparables. But maybe you could tell me, is there a difference between the first session that you were in and this one?
Well, the simple answer is yeah. I mean, I think uh, I, I've been told that last session was unlike any session anybody there had seen before. I was a little surprised at how slow it seemed to start this session. It seemed everybody was a little more laid back. I expected to see a flurry of bills in the first week, and we didn't see it.
But you say slow, but tax policy, for example, moved very, very quickly. And you, of course, have been in the middle of all that, right?
Define in the middle.
You're on Rev and Tax.
Yes, I am on Rev and Tax.
So I mean, and I just by way of, and I've said this to other folks who have come on the program, it was really interesting. The governor made his comments, made his proposal on a Monday. You had a bill in front of the committee, the first bill I think that the committee had in front of it on Wednesday, and then you had the hearing on the bill on, I think, on Monday. So it was a week later that the committee was disposing of it.
It was fast.
That seems very fast.
Well, usually the tax bill is the one you go home on, not the one you start out on.
It varies. I mean, every session is different. I've never seen. It's true. I have never seen it be the one that you start with. But the question that I have for you, so you're on Rev and Tax. Is this the tax policy? It's $600 million. There's nothing to sneeze at. Is that the tax policy that you would have, liked to have seen at the first thing out the chute?
I like tax cuts, and it's a big tax cut. So from that aspect, yeah, I mean, I like it, and the more the merrier. Keep them coming. It was a very, there's a lot of members on the Rev and Tax Committee who are fighting to get a flat tax, and I don't have a problem with the flat tax.
A flat income tax?
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. But this was a $600 million surplus to the state. I mean, if you were to ask me, is this the way that we have the biggest impact on every citizen? Probably not. But is it a big impact? Yeah, of course it is. $600 million.
It's $600 million on a $1.9 billion surplus.
Yeah.
So
there should be more to come, right?
I would hope. Have you seen it yet?
I have seen bits and pieces, but nothing that adds up to 1.9 yet. So there's still a month left of session. So I guess we'll just.
You hope there's a month left of session. I hope there's a month left of session.
Well, I think the drop dead date that we're shooting for is March 25th.
Yeah,
so that would give us a month.
I have seen a lot of drop dead dates over the years, and I remember there one year in particular where I was getting into an elevator. I was a reporter back then, and I got an elevator with another reporter at the State House, and I said, "Man, this is a rough session." And he said, "Well, Wayne, I don't think it's halfway over." And that was the session that went 118 days, which was the longest legislative session in history before last legislative session. So, I mean, and I remember that year they had a drop dead of like April 1st. It went into May easily. May 2nd, I think, was the end of that session. So it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
You never know.
Yeah,
So, but let's get back to tax policy.
yeah.
So, uh, in previous years, I have seen a lot of committee involvement in formulating what the tax policy looks like. To what degree is the Revenue Tax Committee involved in setting what the tax cuts are going to appear to be?
Well, again, I mean, you mentioned this. This is my first term, and it's the first time that I've been on Revenue Tax. So last year, the tax policy, depending on which portion of tax policy you're talking about, I had more sway than in other places. So, for instance, property taxes was a little bit more difficult, but there are some potential solutions in the works on that that it's not mine to share, but I'm optimistic that.
You'll see some property tax.
Oh yeah,
I want to get to that, but first, let's talk to the issue that I was going to ask about, which is the grocery tax.
yeah.
So I've seen you have been voting for the motion to call Ron Nate's bill out, or to go to general orders, as the case may be. Different mechanisms for trying to proceed with bringing that bill to a vote. Are you getting pushback for that?
Well, to be fair, because I don't want to misguide anybody. So the first time he brought it up, tried to bring it out of Ways and Means, I supported the motion. I stood up and I spoke on support of the motion because I think we should hear it.
Mhm.
I mean, when I spoke, I talked about how the governor ran on it in 2018, but nobody's heard about it, right? We haven't seen anything about it. So was it just a nice thing to say in campaign season, or are we actually going to talk about it? And it's the first time I voted to pull it out, and I spoke in favor of that, and it failed. And so every time that he's tried to call it out since then, I voted with the body.
I thought you voted the other way just today. You voted with the rest of the body to leave it in the committee.
To leave it in the
today.
committee.
Okay, so why is that? I should have checked a little closer.
No,
before
it's okay. Well, I want to be, obviously, I don't want to misguide
Well, that's
anybody on
good.
it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it really comes down to if I would vote for it again. That's how I should say. If I vote for it again, it'll be because Ron Nate has gone around and gained enough consensus in the body to say, you know what, now we're going to do this, and then we do it. I'm as you know, I've got a military background, Marine Corps, and so when I see a hole, I hit it. Right, when I see a breach in the dam, I hit it hard, and which is why I stood up and supported the motion in the beginning. But the votes hadn't been, gathered to make it happen, and so it failed. So until I hear from him that he's talked to the rest of the body and they're of a consensus where we're going to override, then I don't see any point in standing up and doing it every day or every other day until we actually have something that we can move forward on.
Well, no, but a vote to pull the bill out of committee doesn't cost you anything. It takes all of 2 seconds, so there must be more to it than that, right? I mean,
Well-
and how do you show a person? I interrupted you, and I didn't
No,
mean to.
it's okay.
How do you show the body that the proposal has support, but not to vote for it? I guess is the operating question.
Well, I mean, I think that's why we last year decided there were some members of the body that wanted to do virtual voting, right? And we said no. One of the arguments for that, besides survival of the fittest, was sorry, was that a lot of the policy making in that building happens because of conversations that legislators have with each other, where we debate the issue and where we actually hash out whether this is something that we want to pursue or not. I think there is a flavor to talk about the grocery tax, and I fully anticipate that it will be talked about. I don't know if they'll be able to muster that for this year, but I'm open to the conversation.
But you support that policy, if I remember correctly. That's been your am I wrong?
Oh, well, okay. So
I'm wrong.
no,
Uh-oh. Been wrong
you're not
before?
completely
Well,
wrong.
that's oh,
Okay.
good.
Okay. So when I ran, and I'm big enough to say when I feel like I might have been wrong. So I ran in 2020, and I hate the grocery tax too. I hate most taxes. And so I said, yeah, I'd like to get rid of it. And I still would like to get rid of it. But when I got into the Rev and Tax Committee and I started digging into the numbers of how we could do that effectively, um, the math didn't completely add up. And so when you open up grocery tax to anything you buy at the grocery store, you start getting into the concept of, don't tax my tampons, or it gets a lot bigger than just your food. For me, I
I don't
don't
think anyone has ever categorized a tampon as a food until just now, but
no, grocery.
but
See,
that
it's something that you need. What I'm saying is
oh,
the
you're saying you
definition between grocery and
yes,
food
there has
needs to
been
be differentiated.
there has been, in recent years, increased calls not to tax feminine hygiene products. They
Correct.
call it the pink tax.
Yeah.
So you're right. Those are certainly things that people would say, "I've gotta have this," and so it falls in the same category as food. But you also don't tax prescription medicines, not you. The state of Idaho does not tax prescription medicines. The state of Idaho doesn't tax caskets. The state of Idaho doesn't tax, services, tax
Yeah.
goods. So, I mean,
So
it becomes very complicated.
yeah.
But what's interesting to me about this whole thing, again, just talking to somebody who's on Rev and Tax, you never even have had a policy discussion about it. So, I mean, can you reasonably say that you can make a decision about tampons, groceries, caskets, or anything for that matter, since you've never really discussed it?
No. I can't speak to that. I'm not the chairman. I'm not in a
No,
position.
but
I
you
have
have
brought so perfect example, and this is something else I brought up when I spoke in support of hearing the grocery tax bill that Ron Nate brought forward last year for property taxes. We had a bill that had been broadly supported in the House. 49 co-sponsors out of 70 in the House. That's a lot. That bill couldn't get a bill couldn't get a hearing.
why? Oh, come on, you know why. You just don't want to say it.
Of course, I don't want to say it. Here's the deal.
Okay, how about I
Yeah,
say it
you go ahead and
you can
say it,
just
and I'll just
nod.
wink. Yeah.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to there are a handful of people, I would say, let's say 3 people who don't like it. The speaker, Scott Bedke, the majority leader, Mike Moyle, and the chairman of the Revenue Tax Committee, Steve Harris. And to the degree that Steve Harris doesn't like it may be a function of that Bedke and Moyle don't like it, or it could be his own personal opinion, I don't know.
I can't speak to all 3 of them. What I can say is that um, what I've observed is that there are people who have been involved in specifically the property tax issue for a long time, right? That's been their baby that they've been working on forever, blah, 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 blah. And that probably came across really great, the blah, blah, blah. But that's how it sounds to me sometimes.
It is something like that.
But
Or it
they've been
sounds
working,
like in Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah.
yeah, but they've been working on it for a long time. And in this world, for whatever reason, there are some people that have a lot of, they feel very possessive of their ideas, of their bills and what they've built up till now, even if it's not the best approach. However, I think there's been added pressure over the years, and again, I think there's going to be a property tax bill that you see this year that you're really going to like.
But you represent the same number of constituents as everyone else does. You represent 45,000, soon to be about 50,000 people in each legislative district. Shouldn't you still have the ability to introduce any bill you want, even if you haven't been here for 20 years?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is that not the case?
Well, right now, what you see is those bills get introduced in Ways and Means as personal bills
And why is that?
because the chairman's usually not willing to hear it, whether he doesn't agree with the philosophy or he doesn't agree it's the best approach. He feels like there's a better approach coming. Um, so if the chair ultimately, if I mean, I had this example. I ran a personal bill this year. So last year, I had a bill called Defend the Guard
Mhm.
that went before the Transportation Committee and died on a voice vote.
Yep.
And it was frustrating. And I got approached afterwards, and they said, you can send this to Ways and Means and get it a bill number. And I was frustrated, and I said, no, I want to go through the normal channels, right? You send it through the committee, and the committee hears it, and that's how it's supposed to work. Well, this year, I took that bill and I took it to Ways and Means, and I turned it into a personal bill. And the reason was because part of getting some of these ideas out here, and the benefit in my mind of the personal bill process is you get to put it out, so the public sees what you're trying to work on. If it never gets a bill number, it never gets talked about. It's just an RS that blew in the wind for a day. But if you get a bill number on it, then you can start building support in the public for it. You can start promoting it as something that you want to do. And I think the grocery tax, even though it's been talked about for quite a long time, I think it might still be in those stages, at least in the House. I don't know how the reception is on it in the Senate. I know a couple years ago they radiator capped it, didn't they?
Well, yeah. So the history is that in 2017, again, the leadership would not allow for the grocery tax proposal to move forward, and so it got over to the Senate. It was another tax proposal, and Senator Bear, orchestrated the radiator capping, which basically, for those of you who don't understand, that means that the context, it's that the metaphor is you take the car into the shop and you remove the radiator cap, and then you install another car underneath it and put the radiator cap back on. That's the metaphor. So basically, you eliminate all the text in the bill and replace it with some other text, making it a completely different bill.
Yeah.
So a tax cut bill came from the House, got to the Senate. The Senate radiator capped it, inserted the grocery tax repeal, passed the Senate, and then got back to the House, and the House concurred in the amendments, and that became the bill that the legislature passed.
And then it got vetoed.
Sent it to the Governor Otter. They're hard to tell apart. Governor Otter and Little, Governor Otter
Shucks.
vetoed the bill, and the state Supreme Court said, well, even though he didn't veto it in time, we're going to let it go, and thus the grocery tax remains in existence today. I don't know. I mean, Jim Rice said something very similar when he was at the program. He said he didn't think the support for the grocery tax has manifested in the House and isn't there. Ron Nate was here, and he said he still feels the support for the grocery tax repeal is there in the House, but how would anybody know? Because you've never had an up or down vote on it, which is just stunning. And I
Yeah.
just wonder, as a member who's been there for one session or for now in your second session, if that's how you envision the legislature operating, and if so, or if not, are you happy with that?
No, well, I think again, I went against the body on a procedural vote to pull a bill out of committee, out of the Ways and Means Committee, because I do want to hear the debate and I do want to have an up or down vote on it. Um, for whatever reason, we're not there yet. So, my mentality is okay. If we didn't get there, we go back to the drawing board. We go back to the beat, and we make sure we have the support. So next time we stand up and say, "I'd like to pull this bill out," you've got 36 votes.
So, what's the tax policy that you wish we had? Or you're on the Revenue Tax Committee. I know that you don't have any more power than any other member of the legislature, but I'm curious as to, if you had a magic wand, or you had the chair for the day, or you were the governor, what tax policies would you hope you would manifest with a $1.9 billion budget? I'm sorry, surplus, I meant to say. $1.9 billion surplus.
Yeah. This is something you're going to see, and you might have heard this before, but I, for one, feel like this is a fake surplus. I mean, there was a ton of money that was pumped into the economy, right? And people were getting checks. The Federal Reserve printed more cash in the last 2 years than I think we can imagine, and flushed it into the economy. And what did people do? They bought stuff. And a large part of our surplus is sales, right? Sales tax. So, um,
And it's also inflation on top of that.
and it's also inflation. So it's difficult to take the $1.9 billion surplus and say, "Ooh, we're going to make all these long-term changes," because they're not all long-term. Um, so I want to stay. I think there are some things we can do with that surplus that'll make a difference. I think dropping the income tax was a good approach. I think I'm having a mind blank here. There's something else we've done.
Yeah,
It's an issue.
what else have you done? I
I
don't
don't know.
It seems like that was the only really major. Oh, well, the other thing that you passed, I don't know if you're counting this or not, was the $20 grocery tax credit increase.
Yeah. Can I talk about that for just a second?
Course.
Yeah. I brought up concerns that it wasn't enough. I think I don't like that it's not implemented until 2024. That's pretty insane. By the time you get your $20, first off, $20 isn't much, and on top of that, that inflation is going to keep going. I don't see that going down. So I don't imagine that $20 being worth $20 by 2024. So I'd like to see it happen a little faster, maybe bump that number a little bit, and that's something. I mean, it's Representative Nichols likes to call it breadcrumbs. I think I called it a nice consolation prize in lieu of grocery tax repeal. So, not the long-term solution. Now, if I had a magic wand, okay, if I had a magic wand, I would get rid of property taxes.
That's the thing that you would do. You get rid of property taxes
Oh, yeah.
completely.
I would take a 12% sales tax right now. You would have some people say, well, that hurts the poor people because they don't pay property taxes, but they pay sales tax. Well, that's a fair argument, but property taxes are. Think about this: when you buy your home and you pay off your home, do you own your home?
No, never.
No,
You're renting it from the government, and if you fail to pay your property taxes, you have the pleasure of giving your property that you worked for back to the government.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that
Don't
at all.
blame you.
I think you should own it. I think when you buy something, you own it. When I pay off my truck, I own it. Right? I mean,
However, there are some states that treat that as taxable personal property, and you don't really own that
I
either.
know. Not here.
We don't quite do that. We still have the personal property tax after a certain amount of money. What was it? $250,000, I think,
Yeah.
something like that. But it's that certainly the property tax is egregious for all the reasons you just described.
So if I had a magic wand, that's what I
That's
would
the
go
one
after.
you'd go after.
Oh,
But
yeah.
is there something to be said about the fact that, I mean, here you have a very Republican legislature, which managed to lower the income tax from 6.5 to 6. Yay! Still higher than all the other states surrounding us, and in which even Mike Moyle acknowledged in his floor debate on the bill. What he didn't talk about is the thing I like always talking about, which is the fact that when the liberal Democrats dreamed up the income tax for Idaho, when they were in control in 1931, the highest income tax they imagined was 4%. And most Idahoans paid 1%. So
Yeah.
how is it that a very conservative, and if I'm to use that term very loosely, if we were to believe the narrative in the media, that is, well, let's just go with this. How does that work that one of the most Republican states in the country, 85% Republican, this is the best tax policy they could do?
Well, and you probably know that history a little better than I do. I think you got a couple gray hairs on me.
Oh dear, you didn't have to point that out. Thank you.
You're welcome. Shucks. I'm curious what the highest income bracket was when it was 4%.
That was the highest income bracket. Oh,
How much
what the dollar amount? It was
Yeah.
$20,000,
Okay.
which in today's numbers is around 350-ish thousand.
Okay.
So it was certainly not most Idahoans that were paying that 4%. Most were paying 1%.
Yeah. Well, I
Eh,
think again, it's back to that approach of people trying to get back to that flat tax, and I don't. Um, it's the benefit of only being in the legislature for 2 terms, right? Is I don't have to take a decade of or 2 or 3 decades of tax policy and put it on my back and say it was me.
Right.
But right now the top bracket in our tax system is
11,000,
11,000.
12,000, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty much if you have a job you're gonna hit that at some point.
So not to belabor the tax policy part, but I also wonder if when you look at the broad cross section of Idaho taxes, sales, income, property tax, and then various miscellaneous taxes, if you think that we're doing if the tax policy is really representative of a conservative government. 'Cause people will say that it is. That's fine. I'm just curious if you share that view.
And I think taxes are. I mean, I don't like taxes either. Um,
Do you think
but
taxation is theft?
fundamentally, yes.
Really?
Yeah, fundamentally.
So
Yeah. Here we go.
no. So okay. The reason I ask, and now you feel like I trapped you, and I really didn't mean to, but so in December, Ben and I were both at the Associated Taxpayers of Idaho meeting, and I ran into. Can I share this conversation? Is it okay?
Okay.
Okay.
I don't remember it, so
Okay,
yeah.
go good. So I'm going to share it, so then you'll be like, "Oh no, I should have told him no."
Then I'll really feel trapped.
I wasn't really trying to set you up. I just swear. And we started talking about public television. And I said, gosh, sure is a shame that the public television budget passed by one vote and you were one of the votes. And then, yeah. And so you said, do you want to remember this? No. You like public television.
Yeah,
Why?
okay. So first off, so I was out of town. I had a buddy of mine who was going.
Oh,
through
that's
some
right.
trouble.
You didn't vote on it. You were gone. Okay.
So my substitute did, and he voted no.
He voted no. Okay. Thank you for correcting the record. I got
You
that
bet.
totally wrong.
It's okay. Well, you got part of it right.
I was close.
You got part of it
close.
right.
Okay, good.
And the part you got right is I said, well, if I was here, I would have voted yes.
Yes. You would have voted for the public television budget. Your substitute voted no.
Correct.
So it wasn't that your opinion had changed. It was that the person who was sitting in for you had a different opinion, I guess. I don't remember who that was.
Yeah. And he's a great guy.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah. Shucks. No. Do you ever watch PBS?
Nope.
Do you watch Channel 4?
No.
20 years?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, I have in the past, but I haven't recently.
Okay.
Sorry, Melissa Devlin. Not sorry, Melissa Devlin.
So sorry. Okay. So I have 2 young kids.
How old are they?
I have a 7-year-old boy and I have a 15-month-old girl.
Oh,
So she's
okay.
not really watching yet.
Right.
But my son growing up, we used to watch Daniel Tiger, right? I grew up on I'm having a mind blank.
Between the Lions,
So Daniel Tiger is essentially a cartoon version of
Clifford the Big Red Dog.
No.
Oh.
Shoot, I can't believe I'm having a mind
Oh
blank right here.
no, I haven't even heard of this, so I don't know.
Um,
Dustin's in the other room. Dustin, do you know what it is? He doesn't know either. Okay.
Okay. So it's a show from, I guess maybe in the 80s. But it's a guy who, like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Oh, it's like Mr. Rogers. It's a cartoon version of
It's a
Mr. Rogers.
cartoon version of Mr.
I've never heard of
Rogers.
that. Okay, interesting.
Oh, it's fantastic. It teaches the same stuff. And there is a place because unfortunately, not every family is wholesome, right? Not every family is, not every kid is supervised, and there's also all sorts of things that factor in. And sometimes those kind of programs. I have a great appreciation for those programs, and you can look and see the positive influence that those kind of programs have had over the years. Now, you can argue that they shouldn't be funded publicly, and
That's sort of what I argue. Well, I mean, it ties to
but there is a public benefit to it, and I guess that's where I lean. So the public benefit to me, because I've seen it affected in not only my life but in my kid's life. I see a benefit to it,
okay. So,
and I don't have cable. I have like one of those little boxes, so I get like 12 channels, and 4 of them are PBS.
but you could also get the same thing off of the internet. There are a lot of programs or YouTube videos. You could watch YouTube and get the same programming, I think, couldn't you?
Perhaps. I don't know. I can look up Daniel Tiger,
Well,
but
I
if I looked up Daniel Tiger on YouTube, it would probably have a little PBS logo on the bottom.
it may be so, but you wouldn't be paying for the taxpayers wouldn't be paying for the over the air service, I guess. I mean, isn't that
Yeah, I mean,
Hey,
it's a discussion.
but the reason why I bring it up
There's a
now,
reason it was so close, right?
well, yeah, and the reason that I brought it up right now is because of the supposition that taxation is theft. So now we're just talking philosophically, right? If
Yeah.
taxation is theft, then necessarily what the government is doing is it's coming to you and it's holding a gun to you, right? And it's saying, "Give me all your money, or give me some portion of your money," and you, the taxpayer, is going, but wait, what will you do with this money that you say you need more desperately than I do? And one of the answers is, well, we got to run the television system so that Ben Adams' kids can watch PBS.
That's right.
Is that I
So,
mean,
so
is
you
that
want to watch Idaho Reports?
is
Don't you
that
know?
legit? I mean, is that really? I mean, but I'm just going back to how strong is that conviction that taxation is theft, or maybe you think that it's okay because we're stealing it for the public good, in your view.
No, hey, that's a fair question. I think that there are some. I mean, let's think about this, right? We spend, and I know this seems like a shift because most of this is borrowed money and not taxed money. But when I think of federally, I think of the national defense spending that we have, right? And some would argue that it's for the common good, right? It's for the protection of the world. Some would argue, right? But we spend more than anybody else by a lot, and it's so there's a point where it becomes frivolous spending, and then there's frugal spending, and I think that's somewhere in the lines of where maybe that distinction is ideologically.
You think that the money for, say, the military can be frivolous? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm
Well, for
trying to.
instance, if we were spending, $1 billion of state taxpayer money on PBS, that would be a no because I think that's ridiculous. It's based off of. I mean, if you were taxing one person, that's where the philosophy of taxation is theft is, right? Because it's my money. But now you're talking about a societal benefit, theoretically.
I mean,
So,
with the military argument, I mean, you're ex-military, and
yeah.
you've proposed legislation that says that the National Guard shouldn't be just deployed to every random foreign battlefield. Hello, Joe Biden and
If you're
Ukraine.
listening,
If you're listening, please don't get us involved in another war.
well, to his credit, he pulled U.S. troops out of Ukraine and into the border countries, which I think is appropriate.
We'll see how long that holds up.
Well, I have a theory on that too, if you want to talk about it
I would love
anytime.
to hear your theory on that. I was sort of off topic, but I'd love
Yeah.
to hear it since you watched this very closely. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I watched it very closely because I lived there for 8 years. 3 to 12 years old. I lived in the former Soviet Union, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big bad wolf
Mm-hmm.
In Ukraine, in Kiev. And because of that, I had a much better understanding maybe of their relationship with Russia. And Russia doesn't really benefit by taking Ukraine. Ukraine's a border country. They're societally, they have a lot of connections, right? They're both from, I mean, if you go back 1,000 years, you're talking about the Prince of Kiev, and his relations to the, King of Novgorod, and I mean you're going way back. We have a 245-year history. It's easy for us to wrap up our history, but back there it's a lot deeper, and the money follows too, right? I mean, there's a river that flows all the way from Russia all the way down to the Black Sea through Kiev, and that was a trade route, right? So the money's there too. But to put it bluntly, I think Russia benefits by putting pressure, but I think the ultimate goal is to destabilize NATO more than to invade Ukraine.
Because Ukraine has expressed some interest in joining NATO.
They have, but it's deeper than that. So let's go back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? I mean, realistically, the USSR had us dead to rights. They had missiles in Cuba. We were in a spot, and they blinked. And we responded by putting missiles in Belgium and Germany and Turkey, right? And then we had them dead to rights, and we've had them dead to rights ever since, even after the Soviet Union fell. So from Putin's perspective, this is my assumption of it. His ideal world would be for NATO to split apart again, so they wouldn't have the thumb on them, right? Doesn't necessarily incline them to do a huge European invasion, but it sure takes the pressure off, and it would put him in Russian history. It would put him on the same category as Stalin and Lenin. So
you think
it's much bigger than
you think it goes to historical legacy? It shows his power, shows his resolve and his might.
The guy's a former KGB. I mean, it's like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
And so, what do you think that the U.S.'s posture is? The appropriate response, if you will.
Yeah, I think we need to support our NATO allies. Not a big fan of putting our guardsmen in the way, but the president can send active duty troops anywhere for 60 days and then 30 days to remove them. He can cycle them through if he wants. So, and we have bases in Europe, right? We still have bases in Germany. We still have bases there. So I think Poland right now is where we're kind of focusing our emphasis, but the deterrent should be there, right? In order to bolster our NATO allies and tell them, hey, you guys can hold your own. I mean, during Trump's administration, when he wanted to pull a bunch of troops out of Europe and have NATO defend themselves, European countries defend themselves, this is the first little test of that flex to see if they can hold together, and we should be there to make sure they do.
That sounds a little bit more hawkish than I was expecting from you, given the legislation that you've been pushing with regard to the National Guard. Is there a distinction there in your mind?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, and to be fair, Ukraine.
You have
I have a vested interest, personally, but I would like to think I'd take that. So I'm a Marine, right? I am about as far from anti-war as you can get. Now, there's a lot of people that support my legislation that would call themselves anti-war. There's a lot of veterans that are anti-war after the experiences they had. I'm down for a fight if we're following the rules. And the rules are outlined in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which says that Congress has the authority to declare war. And Article 2 of the Constitution states that the president is the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy and the militias of the states when called into actual service. So what is actual service?
Your objection
is
to
the first part.
Your objection is to the use of National Guardsmen all over the country for engagement in conflicts that have not been authorized by
constitutionally.
Congress. Okay.
You can say authorizational use of military force all you want, but it's not called the authorizational use of military force in Iraq or the authorizational use of military force in Afghanistan or Syria or fill in the blank. Call it what it is. And and this is a congressional issue, but there's a lot of dysfunction back in DC. I think
How
we can
how
all agree with.
complicated
So,
has that been to communicate to your constituents and to other members of the legislature who might look at that and maybe they support it because they don't believe in engaging in foreign wars or because they agree with you? How complicated has that been?
it's conceptual, right? A lot of there's a concept that the states have no business in foreign policy. They have no business in defense. That's all federal, and that's kind of where the discussion has been. Is look, um, we do have a role. I mean, Daniel Webster told us that we needed to intercede, right, and maintain authority over our own militia, and to intercede between the federal government and our citizens, which are the guardsmen are our citizens.
Yep.
We should intercede there. There is always supposed to be a push and pull between the states and the federal government, and we've moved away from that, especially in the last 20 years
It's
in
it's
terms of
really true.
defense.
It's really true. I mean, obviously the National Guard has a tremendous amount of military equipment, but we
Okay.
don't view that in terms of interceding. It's there because they're going to be called up to go into battle somewhere
Well, and
overseas.
here's the thing. That's a good thing.
Sure.
The National Guard should be where the majority of our fighting force is.
Mm.
Because when you declare war congressionally, that opens up the National Guard to deploy into combat because the whole nation is involved. I mean, I was in Afghanistan in 2012, and I had a guy call me. Well, I had my wife send me an email that said, "Hey, this banking issue is coming up, and you need to call them and resolve it." So I called, and he said, "Oh, I'm looking up some numbers. Let me get your number, and I'll call you back." I'm on a satellite phone in Afghanistan. I said, "Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that. I'm in Afghanistan." He said, "On orders?" I said, "No, I'm here on vacation." You know.
Right. Mhm.
Oh, I thought we were out of Afghanistan. In World War II, we won in 3 years, 3.5. We won the war because everybody was involved.
Everybody was involved.
Um,
Industries was involved. Moms, housewives, sisters, brothers, cousins, everybody was involved.
so if we're going to go to war, let's all be involved. If we're not, and that's been one of these issues, right? Is the only way you can maintain perpetual war is if not everyone is involved. Well, I'm not interested in perpetual war. I'm interested in winning wars. If we're going to go in, we go in and we win.
Well, you're a student of history. I mean, certainly we'd argue that people were more involved, say, in Vietnam than they were in the first Gulf War,
Whether they liked it or not.
whether they liked it or not. I mean, so is that part of the reason for um, the loss there, or is it because that people weren't invested in some faraway place that no one ever heard of?
I think it's a mix. I mean, I think you go to, and again, you're getting into nuanced wars. So Korea
Wasn't planning
was
to
a
talk about this.
oh,
Well, and Korea is another interesting example as well.
Korea was a hangover from World War II. I mean, the initial, uh,
Korea still is a hangover from World War II.
yeah,
Most of that, a lot of that stuff is.
well, they had no declaration of war, and they just went ahead. And the reason the war ended, and because we drove for peace, was because Congress at the time had the testicular fortitude to say, "Mm-mm, you didn't do this the right way," so it stopped. But it only took less than a decade,
So the
and it went
message,
back.
so the message from your legislation is states have a place here, and the Constitution's very clear on who's able to declare war and how that's supposed to play out. But it's not as you describe it then, which I always thought it was sort of more of this dovish, we're not gonna we're peaceniks. We're not gonna go send. Coming from an ex-military guy, very interesting. But what as I understand what you're saying is that um, there is a proper place for foreign engagement. It shouldn't be forever, and it should also happen under the auspices of what the Constitution says.
Yeah, I mean, give me a time period in human history where war hasn't been a factor. You have to be able to defend yourselves. You have to. I mean, there are justifications for war. Um, and there are lots of theories on that. I am a just war doctrine advocate, right? Um, which just war doctrine pretty much says if you have been attacked, if you are going to be attacked imminently, um, or if if essentially if it's inevitable, then you can make that move. But outside of that, there is no justifiable reason.
What wars have the U.S. been? This is very interesting, by the
It's
way.
a,
I know
no,
it's
no,
nothing to do
no.
with your
It's very
legislative experience, but what wars has the U.S. been involved in that you'd look back and say, nope, not compliant with the just war doctrine?
a lot. The just war doctrine kind of faded after World War II. World War II was the last isolation. I mean, uh, actually, World War One kind of gave people a flavor for a different type of doctrine because when World War One kicked off, America's military was very, very small because people feared having a military that was strong enough to do whatever it wanted. World War One happened, we won. It felt good, right? And so, hey, we're pretty awesome. We funded that, we boosted that, right? We have more responsibilities now globally. Prior to that, we were fairly isolationist. Now we have more global responsibilities. We've negotiated I think it's the 3/5 compromise with Japan, where their navy couldn't be bigger than it had to be a 3/5 the size of whatever we had in the Pacific. Um, and that escalated. And so I'd say World War II was justifiable. We declared war. We had a formal declaration of war by Congress. We went to war, and we won. And then what after that? Well, then the doctrine changed to, well, now we are a true global superpower, and so now we have to uh,
Be over everywhere,
yeah, well,
and
there are now the definitions of what justifies us going to a war changed, and the
national
PAL
security
doctrine.
interests, the Bush doctrine,
uh,
was that was the Bush doctrine defending,
Well, the
uh,
next step is economic interests. I mean, I just want everyone to know, like that's the next step.
well, but
Is
the economic interests have always played a larger role than people like to confess, and you'd say that
Yeah, but it would be out in the
arguably
open. That's what I'm saying. It'd be out in the open the next time. I mean,
we just don't.
President Trump actually stepped on that in Syria. We should keep the oil.
Yeah, I remember
You
that.
remember
I do
that?
remember
So
that.
we've kind of already touched into that, and
We
we might
sort
have.
of we've laid bare the dirty laundry, which
And
is
yeah,
that there are reasons besides national security interests, and sometimes those national security interests look an awful lot like oil interests.
and I think theoretically, I think that was the farthest swing that we got. And to be honest, I don't think most Americans are comfortable with that. And so, history tends to swing like a metronome, and as it swings back, we need to make sure that you know
Okay,
we
well,
catch it.
we've spent a lot of time on
Yeah,
this,
sorry.
and
This
no, that's
is
okay because I'm a little bit out of my depth on foreign policies, and I know just enough about wars, and I'm not really good on military history. So I want to get back to the legislature where I do know a few things. So maybe there's that, and I want to talk about something that was really big last legislative session. No, you're not on your main committees, but that's okay because you get to vote on it anyway, which is the critical race theory in K through 12 education and the higher education issue.
yeah.
To your, do you believe that the legislature solved the critical race theory question in the K through 12 system in Idaho in the last legislative session?
Probably depends on how you define it. I advocated last year for cutting Boise State's budget by a lot more than we did.
How much did you want?
So how much did we do? 2 million?
$2.5 million.
Two and a half. I wanted 22 and a half.
That's a good number.
Well, I felt like they were getting federal funds out the wazoo. I mean, the federal bank was burst and
The
was
two and a
pouring
half, they
money
didn't.
out.
Yeah, they didn't even feel it. I mean, but they didn't even do anything with it either. So the narrative is, okay, we've not done anything, but there's nothing to see here. And I know I talked to some of your colleagues who say, yeah, it looks like there's nothing we can or should be doing. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's a state institution. So if they're teaching something that we don't, I mean, there are other states that are making moves on this too. So I think we do have a place at the table. Absolutely. I mean, the citizens of this state don't elect the president of Boise State University or the board. Who do they elect? Us. And if they have a concern with something, then we should be able to address it. Now, that's been a challenge, right? Um, something that I didn't expect, uh, and maybe I didn't feel it as much last year, to be fair, um, because nobody expected me to vote right, anyways. Right, anyways. Uh,
Is that for me?
no, maybe so.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Uh,
we were pleasantly surprised. I thought that you
Wow.
did a really good job last year.
Well, it's funny because someone asked me. I was accused of following the IFF, scores, and oh, you just vote on this and that. I said, to be honest with you, I've looked at 2 bills this year to see what their score was.
Well, that's disappointing.
The rest of them, I read the bill. I love, and I have to say this: I don't really follow your score rating on bills, but I do follow your analysis, and I
Yeah,
read your analysis because I
good.
appreciate analysis, and I read other people's analysis too.
That's what it's there
Um,
for.
So, and I find great benefit in that. So, thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. Yeah, it's very appreciated. Um, but something that I didn't really expect, uh, and maybe I didn't feel it as much, like I said, because I just got there, was the political pressure not to push back on institutions that you feel are your bread and butter. Boise State is kind of a staple of Idaho now, right? I mean, the athletics program makes sure of that. And I'm a Bronco, so everyone knows, right?
Okay, that's important to disclose.
Yeah.
That's a Rule 80 right there.
Yep. I love the
And then
school.
Rule 80, then vote no. No, just kidding. Or maybe not kidding.
Yeah. Well, no, I love the school, and I had some phenomenal professors. Um, and I had some ones that I didn't like so much. But I mean, I didn't feel like it was. And again, it's a little different too. I mean, I'm not an 18-year-old. When I went to school, I was a non-traditional student, just come out of the Marine Corps, and so uh, I didn't feel like an 18-year-old that was very moldable. I felt like a crusty old man when I was there, especially compared to my peers. So when I would get into a class, let's say that talked about, um, how certain cultures were privileged, I laughed.
You got to hear that when you were there.
Yeah,
And that was when?
that would have been 2014, 15, 16. So it's been going on for a while. But it wasn't pushed as fact necessarily. I mean, and something that actually just disturbed me was a lot of the kids that were there already believed it, and the ones who didn't believe it, they're not going to say anything. They're just going to keep their mouth shut and ride through and get their 4 years and get out of there, right? I did have a couple of times when I spoke up and brought up theory. So I'm a creationist, right? I'm not an evolutionist. And one of the discussions was about essentially, their theory that strongest will survive and this and that and the other. And they were talking about how everybody was born that way and trans and homosexuals and all that. And okay, I'm not here to argue. But I asked him, I said, well, look, you're an evolutionist, right? Well, yeah. Well, so you believe, I mean, we all understand that procreation is one of the fundamental baselines of a species, survival of the fittest. Well, yeah. Okay. So are you saying that homosexuals are somehow genetically inferior and not supposed to survive? I got a lot of, no, of course not. Well, that's where your theory leads. So you can buy into that if you want, but I'm not there. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that.
But did you feel that the university was pushing that narrative that, that homosexuality. I've heard this before. There's a phrase. What is it called? Um, Heterosexual normative advocacy or something like that. So you basically you believe that heterosexuality is superior to homosexuality for a variety of different reasons, humanity, procreation, and so on. And that makes you a bigot. I guess I didn't even know that was a thing until very recently, and I saw that on a University of Idaho webpage.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I started the trend because
Maybe so sort of like so it's this the left considers it to be offensive that you would refer to heterosexuality as being a superior form of sexuality predicated in the need to procreate.
yeah, I think there's a fine line between because they kind of buy into the concept of everyone's perfect the way they are, right? You're born that way, or you are who you are. Love yourself, or whatever. Um, and they focus on betterment in different areas, but I think betterment is a you know full person experience. It's a full person adventure, if you will. And so yeah, I mean, I think sometimes the line gets blurred on that topic and maybe leans too far one way or the other
Do,
in
do
the
you th-
theory.
do you think that the universities are pushing the LGBTQ agenda, or that they're supporting?
They are hyper focused on acceptance. And that's not a bad thing in and of itself. Does that make sense? Um, but I think too much of a good thing can be a bad thing.
So what is your what is
And
it?
that's not obviously specific to LGBT or anything like that.
Well,
Just in
no, I mean,
general.
we know that it's, diversity, equity, and inclusion. With the challenge is not that we don't support diversity or, you know, inclusion. The equity part is a little iffy for a lot of different reasons, but we love
It's a dirty
inclusion.
word.
Inclusion's fantastic. Diversity is wonderful, but it seems as if what the schools are doing is they're saying we got to go check a box. And you were at the ATI conference, the Associated Taxpayers Conference. I thought the most horrifying thing that I had heard was when the CEO of St. Al's, a hospital, was sitting up on that stage. You heard her, and she said, "Oh yeah, we check the boxes. We make sure that we hire enough, people of color and people different sexual orientations and different genders." And I'm sitting there thinking, "My gosh, I'm having a heart attack, and I care whether the very best doctor is treating me, not what color they are." And I just couldn't believe that a hospital in Boise, Idaho is suggesting that. But that's what you're seeing.
It's a national issue, and I don't know, what the root of it is. Um, but it's I mean, it's in the society. There's no doubt about it, whether it's, the general society or whether it's in
And you see
business
it
or
in
schools.
Idaho's schools.
When I was in person on campus, I saw more than I expected to see.
So when Marlene Trump from Boise State and Scott Green from U of I show up and they say, "Nope, nothing to see here, everything's fine." Do you buy it?
You'd have to ask the students that are still there, because
But
they're
but
the ones who know. I mean,
But you're I mean, you
and
see the reports and you see what people are saying. On one side, you have folks saying they swear that there's nothing happening. On the other side, you see people like us and various other organizations who say it's not only happening here in Idaho, but it's happening everywhere. It's happening. Maybe it's not happening in Hillsdale. That's the only place it's not happening.
so
Liberty University.
something God forbid. It's the largest Christian university in the country. Um, well, something to put into perspective, maybe. Um, I was in the Marine Corps when "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" got repealed,
Mm.
and I went from "Don't Ask, Don't Tell," and I was in an infantry unit. For the most part, nobody told, anyways. I mean, it's not really something you talk about. To a state university where felt like I had just walked into the 60s or 70s
Mm.
in terms of expression. Um, and they say that, you know, the military is a different world, and it is. You come into this world and you're like, is this normal? Is this what the normal is? Because I don't remember this being the normal before I showed up here.
Mm.
I don't remember this being the normal before I went into the Corps. It definitely wasn't how I grew up. Um, so it's, you know, it's gonna take, I think, some deep diving to really get to the bottom of and make sure we're, because we all need to be on the same page of what we're talking about. I think that's
But to be clear, I mean, the legislature made its findings known. It said we're cutting $2.5 million, and the universities haven't done anything there's not a program that existed in 2020 or 2021
that
that
doesn't. Yeah.
that is gone now. They're all still there, and
Well,
probably
that's
there's
what happens when you cut $2.5 million and the federal government gives them.
right. So what do you think should be the answer this time around? If you, I mean, I know you're not designing the budget bill because you're not on the budget committee, but you will be voting on it.
Yeah.
So what do you want to see from from JFAC?
Well, kind of like, you know, last year that money was temporary, right? It
Mhm.
was a temporary. Here's a bunch of money here's $20 billion from the federal government, and I wanted to take that $20 billion and allocate it other places, and cut the 2.5 million uh, to make them feel it. Um, if they didn't get the intent, and that's something that I'm sure will be discussed um, later on in the session when this budget comes up, right? If they haven't demonstrated that if they can't demonstrate that they've stopped what they were promoting, what caused the legislature concern in the first place, um, then we'll have to deal with it. I don't like. I like killing bills, probably too much.
You
Um,
haven't done enough that this legislative session.
no, I've been surprised. That's what I said. That's what I was talking about when I said we started out and everything was just so smooth sailing. It was like 70-0, 70-0, 70-0. One bill, I might have voted no just to have a red light for the year.
That could happen too.
Oh, well,
I mean, I was really actually, I thought we were off on that track when maybe before we started doing motions every day on the grocery tax. There was a bill that added that said I think the blind commission was to follow some nebulous federal laws, and
Mm.
I was in Fred's office and said, "Oh, this will get," and we had rated it negatively because it was very nebulous, and it generated like 30 no votes. So it was really interesting.
Was I one of them?
I don't remember. You know, it was one of those things, and it wasn't super consequential, so it doesn't, I don't know how much it matters, but it was interesting to me to see the fire from last legislative session, and by way of comparison, in previous legislative sessions, if you go far enough back, like into the 90s when I started watching, um, it was a very often 70-0, very often 70-0. It was very unusual to kill a bill on the floor of the House, and you guys did it over and over and over again
Yeah, I
last
don't know
session.
anything about that. Say,
But
I'm used to killing
you
bills.
guys could be just in a hurry this year. I don't know. Maybe there's not going to be that much angst over different things.
You know, as far as legislation that I've been working on, I've been trying to make sure that they don't get killed, right? And that it's consequential legislation. So my hope is, you know, the goal is always to pass good bills and kill bad bills. And the definitions are up to everybody else.
Everybody thinks that their bill's the greatest thing ever, and everybody who hates that bill thinks it's the worst thing ever. Do you have other legislation you're working on this session?
I do.
Like what?
Let's see. I mean, I have some minor tweaks. There's a gold star plate legislation that I'm working on.
Yeah, don't care about that.
Yeah, I know. I see, because it's not taxes. That's why you don't care.
Well, I just hate license plates.
Well,
I really do.
This is a good one. It doesn't change.
Come on.
It is. It is.
All right, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Try me.
So
Nope, hate it. No, just kidding. Try it again.
So right now, the language says in our statute says that the only way you can apply for a Gold Star license plate in the state of Idaho is if your family member was killed in combat.
Mhm.
That's not the definition given by the DoD. That's not the definition for a Gold Star family, right? Given by the Gold Star organizations nationally or anything like that. And I was approached. Well, are you familiar with the Gold Star Mothers of Idaho?
Sure
Okay.
am. Mhm.
So I was talking to one of the mothers over there, and she seemed really upset. It was my first time going over there and meeting them, and so I started talking to her and her husband, and her son had recently passed, and
Mhm.
so me and my wife had them over for dinner, and over time, the issue came up that she had gone in to get a Gold Star license plate, and they had said, "Oh no, he doesn't you don't qualify under Idaho statute." Uh, so maybe this applies. Maybe this makes me feel better more than it does you, because I have I know Gold Star families personally, and so it's a little more of uh, an issue in the veteran community. Um, but it's important that when someone loses their family member uh, in service to this country, that they're able to remember them how they want to. And when they're shortchanged like that or told they're not up to snuff,
But what was
it's
the
inappropriate.
exception that made that family not qualify?
They weren't killed in combat, but they were killed while on active duty.
Okay.
Okay, very
I see.
different.
Mhm.
Uh, so
But the
we're
D
one of the only states that has that. So fixing
Okay.
that is
Okay.
going to go a long ways.
Yeah, I won't contest that. I'll give you that one.
Thanks. That's one I'm happy about, because I feel like it's
It's a that there's certainly totally the point is still the same,
yeah.
right? I mean, you're serving your country if you're to recognize, and the DoD does. I didn't even know that was the distinction in Idaho code. That's really fascinating. Wonder why that didn't come up the first time when they who knows?
That's a good question. Yeah. Well,
It's in the statute, right? It's not in the rules.
no, it's in statute.
Interesting.
So, and who knows? It might be because that statute was put in the '60s.
Could be.
Vietnam
Yeah.
era rolling, and a lot of just kind of made sense.
Fair enough. What else? What else are you working on?
Well, there's a tax bill for certified family homes. We'll see if that flies.
Tax bill for certified family homes.
Yeah. So right now, certified. Are you familiar with certified family homes?
Go ahead and explain it though for folks who don't know.
Okay. So certified family homes are essentially uh, home residences where someone is caring for someone who is disabled, and they receive Medicare or Medicaid funding to take care of that person. And that money is non-taxable federally,
Mhm.
but the state taxes it. And I'm even okay with the state taxing it, to be honest with you. But what we ran into was, let's say you have someone who is in their 60s, they're over 65, they could apply for the circuit breaker, right? But because they receive that taxable income to take care of their disabled family member, or their same disabled person, doesn't even have to be a family member, um, that bumps them over the threshold to apply for the circuit breaker. And so what this would do is this would fix that to allow them to still apply, even though they're receiving that Medicaid. I'm going to help anybody trying to get some property tax relief.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting thing because we've looked at that and there's some of these piecemeal things which I don't know. You can make an argument for, but it's also very piecemeal. So if you happen to
Yeah.
be in the special interest group that gets recognized as deserving, then you know congratulations to you. You're a veteran. You're a senior. You're low income, whatever it may be. Um, is that how you are hoping the legislature will deal with that this year, or do you said you see
No,
some bigger
yeah.
things on the horizon, but is it
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah, I see something bigger on the horizon, and I don't see this necessarily. I mean, yeah, you can put it in as a piecemeal. I see it more as a cleanup. I mean, I don't think they should have been.
Well, that, but I mean,
Discount should have
but
counted
some
towards it in the
people,
first
for
place.
example, look at the the homeowners exemption.
Yep.
Okay, we'll raise the homeowners exemption and we'll deal with residential owner occupied homes. But then if you own commercial real estate, if you own a bunch of rental homes or whatever, it sucks to be you. Are you amiable to addressing that? I mean, I know you said you'd be willing to get rid of the property tax entirely, but some people think the idea is just to raise the homeowners exemption, call it good, even if it shifts the tax on the other people.
I don't think that does enough.
You don't think raising the homeowners exemption does enough?
No, I think for assessment issues, it might be beneficial to the citizens, but um, I'm looking for more. I mean, like you said, we have a $1.9 billion surplus, and really, and Chairman Harris, who's probably your favorite chairman,
You know,
of all.
I get along really well with Steve Harris.
Good.
He's a good man. I called him and told him that I totally disagree with his handling on the grocery tax. But otherwise, we're still friendly people. I just don't like how the legislature's handled that issue. But anyway, back
Yeah.
to what you're saying.
No, well, he talks about having the state has three levers, right? We have a big lever for income tax. We have a big lever for sales tax, and then we have a small lever, the way the system is set up right now, for property tax. But theoretically, I think we can still tweak that significantly. I mean, I don't.
But
Everything's an offset.
You're
Right? So-
you're not. I mean, I know you said in the perfect world you'd go raise the sales tax and get rid of property taxes entirely, and now you said I don't support. But you know that's not going to happen. Probably not going to happen. Although there is a bill that just got printed today, I think, in fact, that uh, raises the sales tax in exchange for getting rid of some amount of local property tax. Not all of it, but some maybe local school levies and some other local jurisdiction levies.
You mean not getting rid of the local bonds and levies?
Yes,
Yeah, but it gets rid of the.
that's my understanding. I haven't actually
Yeah.
read through the bill, so I need to. As they
Well,
say
you
in
dig-
Congress, I
yeah.
reserve the right to revise and extend my remarks. It was only just printed,
Yes.
but the concept still is very similar to what you've described, although there may be some nuances there that I don't know. But the question is,
It's not my bill.
the question is, where's that middle ground? What would that be? So knowing that you're not going to raise the sales tax probably by, you're not going to double the sales tax, I guess, as the case may be, and get rid of property taxes, and you're not really favorable to raising the homeowners exemption.
Oh no. So the bill that came forward to raise the homeowner exemption, I supported.
You
I
support that.
voted for it.
But
Because I'm looking to provide property tax relief. Period. I know that's the number one issue, and there are a million ways to skin that cat. Now the argument is we only have a small lever, but I want to take that lever and make it maybe a little bigger
by what?
by raising the sales tax.
Okay, I see.
And eliminating some property tax.
I see.
And again, it's a concept that's not mine. I don't own the rights to that, so it's
There have
something
been
that's gonna be-
variations of that that have been talked about for a while.
So that's kind of what I've been advocating for, because that's what I see as the long-term solution to our property tax issues is getting rid of it. It's again, and I already said why I don't support it. So
Okay, let me switch gears to something
Boom, boom, boom,
entirely
boom.
different.
we beat it to death.
Let's do something entirely different because I'm tired of talking about tax policy. You're on the Environment and Technology Committee.
Correct.
What the heck are you guys doing on that committee? 'Cause do you meet? I don't even know.
Yeah, we meet.
What have you met about recently? That's interesting.
Right now, the big topic of conversation has been $300 million that it's from the ARPA funds that we're allocating as grants to regions that are going to use it for water and sewer projects.
Great.
I know it's a fun
That's
committee.
that's delightful. Have you guys haven't had a conversation about Bitcoin?
Yeah. Okay. Um, Not in our committee. There have been discussions about that, and last year there was actually a bill introduced
There
about
was, it
cryptocurrency.
was a terrible bill. Yep.
Yeah,
We remember that one.
digital assets.
The digital assets. There's another one this year.
Correct. So that's kind of the angle they're pointing at. I think it's going to be harder. I mean, it's been turned into a political football this year. I don't know if you saw, but the lieutenant governor said she's going to make Bitcoin, Idaho, the crypto state.
I've seen her talk about Bitcoin.
Right?
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily make it easier to push that legislation during an election year. So I think, and something that I realized last year, because I came into the legislature like, man, let's push crypto, right? Let's get this concept out there. Let's start turning it into digital assets so people can say, I own it. It's property, mine, in this state. And ran into a little trouble, just like anything else. You come into a body where not only has everybody been here for a while, but the average age is a lot higher than the average Bitcoiner.
People can't use their email.
It's a new concept, and
Yeah.
that's something that a lot of these concepts, even my Defend the Guard legislation, it's a new concept. I acknowledge that. So let's start talking about it. Let's start chewing on it, and I'm not going to stop chewing on it. I think cryptocurrency is another issue that is kind of in that chew
You're a
stage.
Bitcoiner, aren't you? Do I recall that correctly?
Yeah, a little bit. Not enough to be a
You own
Bitcoin billionaire,
you own any
unfortunately.
S coins?
Yeah, I
Can we
have.
call S coins?
Um,
Can I say the word? Am I allowed to? Like it? Do you own any shit coins? That's an encouragement.
Are you familiar with Dogecoin?
With which one?
Dogecoin.
Dogecoin. Yeah, that's like the poster child of
Yeah. So I don't own
shitcoins.
any Doge, but I
okay.
do own Shibu Inu.
Oh,
which is
you own the cousin of the.
Well, no, it's
world.
supposed to be. So on a lot of apps, to trade Bitcoin, you use Ethereum.
Right. There are Shibu Inu dexes that let you trade back and forth between Shibu as the base pair.
Well, Dogecoin, that's supposed to be the Ethereum for Dogecoin.
Right. Okay.
So
well, if you say so,
if it ever takes off, watch out, y'all. I dabble a little more than I was more involved in it. I had more Bitcoin than I have now, more Ethereum than I have now. But it's I like to call it a poor man's stock market.
Do you talk to other members about cryptocurrencies?
Not as much this year. I feel like there's been a lot of other issues. Again, I'm on the business committee. I'm on the revenue and taxation committee. As you can tell, allocating a lot of money in energy, environment, and technology.
Yeah, very exciting.
And so last year I talked about cryptocurrency a little more than I have this year. But I think it's going to be one of those discussions that's had over the next couple of years where we try and catch up because we didn't get ahead of the curve on it. Now we're playing catch up.
You are playing catch up. There's not about that. Okay. Well, any other things you want to talk about tonight that I haven't already thought of? We can talk all night.
No, it's okay. Just keep your ears open and eyes open for another piece of legislation that'll be coming from the Senate.
On
so you remember when we met last November?
Yes.
We didn't get anything passed?
Yes. We all remember that horrible waste of time.
Well, I can't go into the details, but there may be something that came out of that is going to be very beneficial to citizens here in Idaho. I'm very
in terms of masks or vaccines, or
in terms of vaccines,
and that would pass both bodies, get signed by the governor, and actually be meaningful and not just a strongly worded letter to the Biden administration.
Yeah, this would be more significant than that. Again, time is the teller to see if it can actually pass both houses. But
where would it start?
In the Senate.
It would start in the Senate. Boy, that makes me very suspicious.
Well, I wrote the language.
Okay.
And so Be less suspicious.
Be less suspicious. Okay. Well,
Wait for it to come out.
that's
And
exciting.
yeah,
Okay. And
I'm optimistic.
it's something that will address some of the issues that Idahoans have expressed concerns over regarding vaccines, masks, or both.
Vaccines.
Okay.
We're tackling one animal at a time. I don't want to talk too much about it because, again, it's still in the works, and it's going to take a little more refining. But in the next week or two, you'll see a piece of legislation on it.
I'm glad to hear you're still working on that. It seems that a lot of folks have given up and are finding that the Senate has just been impenetrable when it comes to any kind of decent policy. You still hold out some hope that it can be done.
Yeah, I do. Um, there are lots of ways to, there's bomb throwers and bridge builders, and there's a time to be both, right? Um, but I started working on this legislation with a couple key senators last October, November, and it wasn't ready. Unfortunately, in November, they didn't have enough consensus to make it, but there was interest, and thanks to some help in the House from other legislators who had seen that piece of legislation and said, "No, you need to keep pushing that." We now have an RS that is going to actually have significant impact and give Idahoans some security on that issue.
Where does it reside? Is it a health and welfare committee issue?
No, it is a judiciary commission.
It's a judiciary
Yeah.
committee issue. Interesting. So you don't have to worry about the flavor of the month, really bad state senator named Fred Martin. Did I say that out loud on live TV? Yes, I did. Okay.
Well, the important part for us, when we're writing legislation, if we know there's an area where the chairman's not favorable, then try and shape your argument differently. I mean,
So you've shaped
what it
your
is.
argument so it's a judiciary committee issue, and you have buy-in from the chairman, Todd Lakey, who is in the same county as you, and you probably see
Yes.
him a lot.
Yeah.
Good.
No,
Excellent.
there's a lot of support here.
That's really good news. It's good to hear that. I don't think anyone's brought up that issue at all in the last several programs.
Well, it
So
didn't go away. I think that's something, the public didn't forget that we got in there in November and did nothing. They
that
didn't
was
forget.
really depressing.
Oh, tell me about it. I was there.
Yeah. I wasn't. I think it was in Mexico. I think I was in Cancun.
Yeah. So very frustrating. I mean, it was 3 days, and I came home, and my wife looked at me and said, "You guys didn't need anything done." And I said, "I know." And I probably had about 3 or 4 days of. I'm a human too. I had depression for 3 or 4 days. Just like, man, we didn't do what the people needed us to do.
Did you have conversations with your constituents about that? What did they tell you?
I have a very understanding constituency. The ones that were frustrated about it, they knew that I had done everything in my power to make something
Their
happen.
anger wasn't with you.
No, it was frustration with the system.
Yeah.
But the founders that created this system of government, for better or for worse, didn't build a system to always act quickly. Someone should tell the Democrats in D.C. that.
I mean, I would tell the Democrats here that.
Well, they don't do it here. They don't have any power.
No, that's true.
Don't
they? Don't they have? I
not
think
the same.
They seem
Not
to
the
have
same.
a significant. I mean, for crying out loud, there are bills that are pushed by liberal Democrats here that you would think would never have any life here in Idaho. But my gosh, what is that all about? That's a
I
whole
don't
other
know.
topic. I guess.
Anyways, I just I wanted to make
That's
sure I
really
made a plug for that.
that is really really good news. So you think when would you anticipate seeing that bill for the first time?
The public will probably see it maybe end of next week. Maybe
Very
end of
nice.
next week. Yeah.
Okay. Good. We'll look forward to that. I'm glad you haven't given up on that. That truly is, and especially watching the things that are taking place all over the
Yeah.
country and the world. I mean, Canada. Hello, Canada.
Well, Marines don't quit. We don't retreat. We regroup.
We've heard these things about you Marines. Thank you for doing that.
Tenacity's there.
Well, thanks for being on the program. Appreciate you taking some time, and
Absolutely.
welcome back anytime.
Much appreciated.
And, I'm gonna have to ask Dustin. Dustin, who's coming on What's that? Priscilla Giddings is going to be here on Thursday. So look forward to, I'm sorry, not Thursday, Tuesday. Today's Thursday. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So on Tuesday, next Tuesday, 7 o'clock, Priscilla Giddings. And then next Thursday at 7 o'clock, Senate President Pro Tem Chuck Winder. That's pretty exciting.
That's a good lineup.
That is a really good lineup. We're looking forward to that. Anyway, thanks again for watching the Hoff